What's up, shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Shift podcast. And oh my goodness, Elizabeth Scala here, your host. If you think that, and because I get this feedback all the time, if you think that you hear me smiling through the podcast, you're going to hear me smiling even more today. We are here in experimental mode. Podcast is going on as it does. And additionally, we are recording the podcast as video. So you will see a video out there on social media, our websites, and various places in the future. But this is an experiment I've been considering for, since October of last year. So several months. I'm slow to technology. It takes me a while. So anywho, shifters, I'm focused on the podcast. I'm here with you in the audio. We're going to go through the interview as we do week after week. And if I'm stumbling through, it's because I'm also laughing at myself as I see myself on this video. So those shifters who have been listening week after week know about this podcast. It's for nurses who are stuck, looking to get a new change, something different in their career, or just find inspiration from what nurses are doing across the country. Secondarily, nursing students may also tune in to figure out, what the heck do I want to do after nursing school? If I'm thinking, I don't just want to go work in a hospital like my professors are telling me, these nurses we interview will share with you all the unique and diverse things that you can do. And so, shifters who have not listened, that's you out there. New shifters, welcome to the program. And as I said, mostly a podcast, but as I'm experimenting here with video, just join us for the ride since you're here for the first time. All right, enough of that mumbo jumbo. Let's get to the point of today's program, which is our guest. So Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I love how you have, and shifters listening, he has this mic and he's actually holding his, so he looks like a rock star. So Daniel, I know I just introduced you with your brief bio, but let's expand upon that. Share a little bit more about your nursing career journey, types of roles you had, and then what you're currently up to.
Yeah, so I started as a new grad on a telemetry floor, and then I spent a couple of years there, knew that I couldn't hack it on the floor. And I was looking around for different jobs, and I learned that the operating room in our hospital had the highest pay, and it was the hardest to get into, and it was the lowest turnover. So I put all of those three things together, and I was like, that must be a good place. And I didn't even rotate through the OR when I was in nursing school, other than one day. So I just applied to the training program, got in, and I was right about my assumptions, in my opinion, about the OR. I loved it. And during my time in the OR, I started a website, New Grad Nurse Help, as a side gig. And then since then, I got an offer to join a tech startup as the director of operations. And so I left my hospital job last January. It's been a year, which is crazy. Wow. And so this is my full-time thing now.
Interesting. So I'm pointing out to the shifters real quick. Daniel just mentioned something that if you are tech savvy or interested in technology or just kind of curious, want to play around with that, that's something I always point out to the shifters, Daniel, the new, and unique thing that the guest is providing here. So shifters, keep that point in mind as you consider, reaching out to Daniel after the podcast, checking out the website, and just staying in touch with what he's up to. Because if you're that techie kind of nurse, trust me, we need those. That's not me. We definitely would need Daniel's expertise there. So let's jump right into the interview then. The first thing I want to ask you about is, how did you get into nursing specifically? So was there a person, an experience early on? Many people say that it's a calling, while others like me find it after another experience. Tell us about how you got into nursing.
I have about 6 doctors in my immediate family, including my dad and my grandpa. And then so I grew up around medicine. My dad used to take me to the hospital while he was rounding, and he would just drop me off in the ICU nursing station, which in retrospect seems super unprofessional, Dad, if you're listening to this, because I never see kids in the nursing station ever. But I was just there, and the nurses were always super nice. They gave me a seat, which I now know is like giving up gold. And they would just kind of watch me draw for hours. And so I think that's why I was more comfortable with nursing and gravitated towards that instead of towing the line and becoming a doctor like the rest of my family. I think I made the right decision. I think nurses have a much better quality of life than physicians. Um, and then other than that, like one story that's always stuck with me is my grandpa was a medic, a field surgeon during World War II in the Philippines. And he used to treat both American and Japanese soldiers. And one day he saved a Japanese soldier's life, and they wrote a note in Japanese saying that he was like a good man and he helped both people and all that stuff. And then he was out in the field, and a Japanese soldier came up to him and like pointed their guns at him, and they read the note and let him go and spared his life. And so the reason why that stuck with me is like, just in that instant, like my entire family tree could have been wiped away. And so like, I just feel so lucky. Like we were all so lucky to have made it this far, just to be alive. And so that's something that stuck with me. So I feel very strongly about like fighting for life and preserving life as best as we can, just because so easily just everything can change.
That's really fascinating. So he was literally carrying that letter around with him and was like, here you go, look at this.
Yeah, please don't shoot me.
Wow. Oh my goodness. All right, let's jump into your career philosophy. So you're talking about preserving life, helping other people with quality of life. I'm curious, how do you show up as a nurse? If you had to describe that career philosophy, what would it look like?
I have like a motto that I say at the end of every podcast that I believe in every day, and it's live, learn, love, which means I believe that everyone, including and especially nurses, should live a life with meaning, learn every day, and love what you do. And I think if you accomplish those three things, that's the key to happiness. I think that's what I'm going for anyway.
Awesome. I love how simple and succinct it is, very clear and easy to remember. What you just mentioned, though, as you were describing your motto, you said something, as you end your podcast. So we didn't even speak to that in terms of your introduction and telling folks what you're up to. Just for sake of folks who want to find more podcasts to listen to, what's your podcast and where do people find that?
It's called the Project Nurse Podcast. You can find it on all the podcasting stuff, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and SoundCloud. And it's actually very similar to yours. We kind of have the same philosophy where I'm trying to inspire nurses to like do big things and just to go really hard at everything they do.
Cool. So that's the Project Nurse, and we'll put links to that for sure in the show notes. So now we're going to reflect upon, your career history. This could go as far as nursing school, through your time in the OR, even what you're doing now. We're going to look at, the good, the bad, the ugly. And first, starting off with an obstacle. We bring this up to point out to shifters listening, we can always learn from every experience. We can grow from every challenge. So tell us a story like that. What was like a hardship or a difficulty that you had to overcome?
I think that depends on your definition of failure. I can tell you that I've felt like a failure plenty of times, like all the time. We've all had those med errors that make you feel sick to your stomach. And we've also had the times when like a patient codes on you and they don't make it. And I don't know about you guys out there, but those things never have left me. Like, I remember every single one of them, and I always wonder what if, like, what did I miss something that I shouldn't have? What if I was bigger, stronger, faster, smarter? Like, would that person still be here today to see their wife or their kids? That those are the hardest moments of nursing for me. And then on the business side, I feel like a failure all the time. I mean, nothing ever works like you say it's like you think it's going to. Entrepreneurship is a grind. Like people will call you a scammer, that your product sucks. People ask, why does your product exist when LinkedIn exists already or Indeed exists already, But for me, I feel like you only fail if you give up. And can I add that to my nursing philosophy?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, you only fail if you give up.
So I guess as we're asking this question, Daniel, you're describing these challenges and saying you carry them with you. You think about the patients, the what if, and then even in the business sense, people, putting down, judging, calling names, whatever the case may be. But I guess the lesson to point out to the shifters, now correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I'm hearing, is to keep going, to not give up when you're going through a difficulty or a hardship. Would that be what you would say is your kind of outcome here?
Yeah, definitely. The two things that I say to people is to assess and manage your fear, because that's usually what's holding you back. Is what are you afraid of, and really, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? And then the second thing is that grit and perseverance are the things that make people successful, not good ideas. People think, oh, I need a good idea, I need a good company name, I need a good logo. Do I need to start an LLC before? Do I need no? Just get started and then grind it out, because that's what happens. Every idea out there, I guarantee you somebody else is already working on it right now. You just don't know about it. And so it's like all about execution in entrepreneurship and in life.
Totally. I mean, I've had that happen to myself in terms of this podcast. So, along with the podcast, Your Next Shift, I've published the book, Your Next Shift, as well. And the book's out there. And then I find that there's another podcast very similar to mine, or another nurse who's teaching people about how to enjoy their careers just like me. And so, similarly, like what you're saying, you could give up, throw your hands in there, get disgusted, and say, oh, woe is me, I'm a failure. Or, position yourself in a unique way, pull upon your strengths and your assets, and then know that all of those people are out there to collaborate with. It's actually an awesome potential. So let's flip to the other side of the spectrum, which is talking about a success. Again, reflecting across the span of your career, what's an achievement you're most proud of, or something you're like, woohoo, toot my horn today?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm very good at, in my opinion, is I'm very strategic about how I spend my time. Like, I like to leverage multiple things together to make like exponential growth. And I'm obsessive about being the best that I can possibly be at everything that I do. So for example, I've always been really shy and introverted, and I had a very hard time at networking events and public speaking. Like, I'm still really nervous right now. Like, I don't know if the listeners can like pick it up in my voice, but so when I was working at Scripps Hospital, I got into their emerging leader program, and the reason why I applied was because I saw that at the end of the program, you presented on stage in front of the executives of all the hospitals. And so for the audience listening who isn't familiar, Scripps is $1 billion nonprofit health system with multiple hospitals and facilities. And so I was up on the stage talking in front of all of them. And so I obsessed about like learning how to present like a TED talker and public speaking and all that stuff. And I just gave this like knockout performance. Like, it was so good. And so that's a great example of leveraging two different things. I was able to improve my public speaking, get that networking experience, and advance my career all at the same time, all in one event. And so if you keep stringing those wins together, you can just ratchet up your career faster than you can possibly imagine. One other motto out there for those listening is your network is your net worth. And if you're young and just getting into the game, you have no idea how true that is. So you just got to get out there and start meeting people.
Wow. That is a fantastic. I'm blown away, first off, about your courage with that experience. And thank you for sharing that specific story with the shifters in terms of the fact that what you were speaking to, that leveraging the experience and then strategically managing your time, sort of repurposing and going through one situation that manifested, in several ways. I absolutely love that. It's sort of like we're doing today. We're recording an audio, and at the same time, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't stand tech, but we're trying to do this thing at once. So I think that's so purposeful, and I appreciate you sharing that with the audience. That's amazing. So in terms of that, you've reached that goal and others along your career path. How do you set and reach goals? Like, what are some of your professional habits that you would attribute to your career success?
So I would say, as far as professional habits, and in addition to being very strategic about how I'm learning and how I set my time, I always try to learn skills that even if I fail, quote unquote fail, even if I don't get the outcome, I'm still going to have a skill that's very useful to my career. So even if I tripped and fell and made a fool out of myself on the stage, I would have had that experience of learning how to speak publicly and professionally, and I could use that in something else. So, I try to do that, and then I try to get inspiration from other industries and apply it to nursing. So, for example, my presentation at that emerging leader program was actually trying to institute Google's like 20%, 20% program, which is where they give their employees freedom to spend 20% of their time working on a different project outside of their regular job. And so I think that would really help nurses a lot in the hospital if they could just get rotated off the lines for like one shift, every 2 weeks, and work on a fun community project and get paid for it. I still really think that that's a good idea. So if anybody out there is still in a hospital and you want to talk about it, I mapped it all out. So we just got to find an executive that's willing to pull the trigger.
That's amazing. I actually have been conducting interviews for a study I'm the principal investigator on in my job world. And without going into details and breaching any confidentiality there, the questions I ask the nurses are about how do they get in projects and what motivates them and interests them, and above and beyond getting paid for it, because you're right, the budgets are being cut, the finances are being held, and the clinical nurse is at the bedside with the patient. So your project, oh my gosh, I'm interested in hearing more about it. And I agree with you, to have those visionary leaders, to have that collaboration with the frontline staff, and to allow people to, like you said, maybe get into a volunteer project, do something in the community, something for the area they work, team building. Oh my goodness, the sky is the limit. What an innovative idea. I love it. All right. So shifting to, I brought up money. Let's shift to a money question. Every one of us out there working hard to pay our bills. I also see value in reinvesting in ourselves professionally. So what do you think you spend, or what do you spend your money on that makes your job easier, better, or some mixture of both?
This might be a little bit different answer than the other guests, but first of all, I spend a lot of money on books. And the second thing is I spend money on anything that gives me more time. And so I use a time tracker on my phone to measure exactly how much minute. And then so I learned that I was spending 3 hours every week or more at the laundromat, and then the fluff and fold service is like $10 more. And then so for 10 extra dollars, I was able to save myself 3 hours of time. And so stuff like that, like at home, I have all these kitchen gadgets where it just automates like the very long process of making like bread or pasta or whatever. And then so that frees up a tremendous amount of time that I can spend learning and networking. So I would just say that you can spend your time or spend your money to give yourself time. And if you do things like keep your expenses low, live rent as cheaply as possible, bike to work, which is what I do. I don't have a car. So my wife and I share one car, and I bike everywhere I can. So if you reduce those big ticket expenses that I know we all want to do as soon as we start getting paid as a nurse, you can save a massive amount of money, and then you can use that to buy time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's perfect. And I want to ask you if you can repeat, there was just a little, we got most of the response, but the one part where you were talking about your phone. So you were saying it's an application that you have that measures your time?
Yeah, it's called Toggle Timer. I'm looking for different solutions because it doesn't do everything that I want it to do, but basically you just load the app and then hit the play button and it starts tracking your time, and then you can write in what the task is you're working on. And so I'm trying to find something that will automate, like it'll create tasks based off of my calendar.
Right.
But so right now it's a little more manual, but still, yeah, I track all of the time, all of my time.
You want a time app that actually saves you more time by being more automated.
That's exactly right.
You know what I love
Yeah.
though? Let's just pause for the shifters here for a moment. So I think this is a great challenge for any of us. And even those of us who may not run out and get an application that measures, that's fine too. But just over a course of maybe a week or a month, whatever you need to kind of get all your activities in, just start tracking the amount of time you spend in certain activities. And Daniel's right. I mean, some of it is just so wasted that we're saying, oh, there's no time in the day. I can't read that book. I can't work on that project. I can't do this and that. And when you do something like this, you find you got plenty of time, actually. In fact, probably more than you ever imagined if we can cut out some of that wasteful stuff. So we're going to get to the Mad Libs piece in just a moment here, Daniel. But before we do, can you point out to the shifters where's the best place to find you online?
You can email me at daniel@clipboardhealth.com. That's the best place to do it. Check it out. Let me know what you think of our products. I'm always open up for feedback. Yeah, Clipboard Health.
Clipboardhealth.com is the site. And then Daniel just mentioned his email address, daniel@clipboardhealth.com. So the other thing, shifters, this is episode 133. Another way is always, in the show notes in your podcast player, we'll have links to all of Daniel's social media and website, as well as on elizabethscala.com, clicking on the podcast tab and just looking for episode 133. So before we get to the Mad Libs, just one more mention. I did speak to the fact that there is a Your Next Shift book. So that also is out there on, Amazon and such. But if you go to elizabethscala.com, you can click on the books tab, and then you'll see the Your Next Shift book, which talks about career and techniques such as the things we're talking about here, how to apply entrepreneurial skills to your nursing career, even if you're staying at the bedside. Because I agree with you, Daniel. There are so many things that we can learn from other industries, even those of us who want to stay clinically focused right there, hands in hand with patient care. Opening and expanding our mind to what else we can be doing could even up-level our nursing career in that way. So now here we at, give you a little time to kind of pause and collect yourself as we get to the Mad Libs. This is the part where I'm going to start off a sentence and you're going to fill in the blank with a word or a short phrase, okay? All right. So the first one, if I were to shift one thing in my nursing career right now, it would be?
Network.
There you go. Networking, goal of Daniel's. Excellent. Next one. One thing I wish I had known about being a nurse while growing up is?
Hard. How hard it is. Yeah, they said, oh, it's a great job, great pay. There's a nursing shortage. It's always in demand. Yeah, but I never asked myself why there's a nursing shortage, why people aren't sticking around.
This
And
is
so,
true.
yeah, I don't think it would have stopped me, but I would have just had a more realistic outtake on everything.
Okay. The next one. The one thing I wish I had done differently so far in my career would have been?
Started earlier, everything.
Excellent. Yeah, you were talking about making that shift into the operating room, and my goodness, even if you had done that earlier, look at what differences exactly. Okay, two more. If I were to speak to a nurse, a nursing student, a shifter out there one-on-one, I'd like to share these words of wisdom about nursing, which would be?
Greatness lies just outside of your comfort zone.
Ooh, I'll let the shifters ponder on that one. Okay, and then the last one, just finish us off here in alignment with this show. My next shift is?
Helping every nurse find a career that they love.
Ooh, Thank you. And we all would welcome that support. So Daniel, so thank you so much for joining the Your Next Shift podcast, for being that pioneer innovator with myself and testing out the videos. We appreciate your experience and expertise and all that you've shared with the Shifters audience here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, Shifters, you know the drill. We will be back next week with the same time, same place, another interview, different person. So love to see you back. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Share it with your friends, colleagues, or coworkers. And if you do listen through iTunes, I know many people do not, but if you do, if you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and leave a rating or review. Helps other nurses and nursing students find and access the program. If you'd like to get in touch with me, all of my contact information and everything all about me is at elizabethscala.com. Anywhere on social at Elizabeth Scala. Until the next time, enjoy your next shift. Thank you.